Number is 2024.
Contract with New Point Healthcare Advisors for consultation on the Memorial Medical Center lease agreement up to the amount of $231,000.
Can we make a motion?
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Murillo and a second by Commissioner Reynolds. Welcome, Mr. Gooden. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Ms. Michael is here with me as well on this one. This is to approve a sole source contract with an entity known as New Point Healthcare Advisors. What we are asking for them to do, if this is approved, is to go through the lease agreement, the asset purchase agreement, and the rest of those 5 binders that are about 4 inches thick each that I have in my office, and analyze what is required under the lease agreement with LifePoint related to the operations of Memorial Medical Center, and to determine are they in compliance? Are there areas where they need to come into compliance? Are there areas that, keeping in mind this lease was first done in 2004, and this was a 40-year lease, so we have 20 years left on this lease. And there's a lot of things that have changed in the healthcare world since 2004. And there are provisions within the lease that may be affected by these changes. And that's why we want this New Point to be able to look at what are some of the best practices now, where are some of the legal issues that may have arisen or may be new that since over the last 20 years. For example, there is a provision within the asset purchase agreement that says that they will provide a certain level of care provided there's not a significant change in funding and funding sources. Well, since 2004, we've had the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare. There have been significant changes within the New Mexico Medicaid programs, some of that arising from Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. And so there's just a lot of things that we need to look at and see, where were they then? Where are they now? Where can they be now based upon funding? Where do we want them to be? I've had several discussions with attorneys from the city, from LifePoint, and trying to figure out, and I think we all look at it and say there may be areas that we need to amend, that we need to come back and look at what can we do to provide better services to the citizens of Dona County when it comes to their medical care. And one thing we all agree to is things have changed over the 20 years. I spoke to an attorney the other day, and he indicated he had talked to some regulatory people in the healthcare world at various levels, the regulatory agencies in the state, federal levels, and they said there's only one thing I can tell you since about the differences between 2004 and 2024. It has all changed. And so that's what we're asking for New Point to do, is to come in and review our contract, our lease with LifePoint, review what was required as far as medical services, levels of services, and see where we can go to improve, to make things better for the residents. And now you may ask the question of why New Point Healthcare? Because New Point Healthcare, and an individual, one of the principals there named Joe Lupitka, I think his name is called, is one of the only people that was involved in the original lease negotiations that is still around, that knows what happened. And there people are around. I mean, there some of the city councilors at the time are here, some of the county commissioners, maybe on their vacation, their retirement plan, whatever, but the one that was really involved in it the most was Mr. Lupica, and he'd be able to bring with some of the analysis that he will do, also some of the background that took place at that particular time. And he told a couple of stories. Jamie and I met with him, and he told a couple of stories of things that happened during the negotiation process initially, and why there are certain provisions that are in the lease, because there were certain individuals in the community, certain of the city council at the time, certain of the county commissioners who were very adamant about certain provisions and that they, certain programs be continued. And he has that background. So that's what we're asking for. There, we have attached here the scope of work that he proposed with the sole source contract. And there's a lot there. Don't want to go over each item of that, but we believe this would be an appropriate method to be able to review the lease, review MMC's performance of the lease, and see where do we go from here to make sure that we're having the appropriate medical care for the citizens in Dona County, and particularly, I'm talking medical care generally, but also more specifically the medical care for the indigent and for those who are not able to afford other medical care. With that, I have here available for questions, and more specifics of it, Ms. Michael may be able to address as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Commissioner Sanchez.
Mr. Gooden, just, I guess, why would we want, while I get understanding the background, I think what's in paper is pretty clear. So I think, would we not want to have some outside perspective on the existing agreement versus somebody that maybe authored the original agreement and may have some potential bias in how it's viewed?
And really quick, same thing to piggyback off of that, and just to give an example. And I do believe that this review needs to happen as well. But for an example, like the capital improvements, is this the same group of individuals that said it was okay to put between 4 and 5% capital investment into the hospital? That's a great example of one of the weird things that are in this lease. And are we really wanting to hire the same people that did this to come back in and try to fix a mess? Just to piggyback on.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioner, you know, I think that is a point to look at. We'll say that Mr. Lupica was not the person that wrote the lease. He was involved in some of the negotiations, helped to bring the city and the county together. From what I understand, at the time that this lease was done, there was little agreement on anything initially between the city and the county. City and county owned a hospital. That was about the only thing they could agree on, was that they owned a hospital and it wasn't being operated in an efficient manner that was beneficial to the city, the county, and the residents. That is about the only thing anybody could agree on. And so Mr. Lupica was part of that process in bringing those together. An attorney named Matt Holt was brought into that process as well. He's the one that actually drafted the contract. And there's a lot of things in there that were compromises because the city wanted one thing, the county wanted something else. And so there's a lot of compromise in there. You bring up about the capital improvements. You know, there's been a lot of discussion about that over the years. One of the first things that I got involved with when I came to work at the county about 9.5 years ago was dealing with that capital allocation issue and whether it should be more or less. At that time, the LifePoint was offering to release some escrow funds like 2 years early. It was $8 million, $4 million for the county, $4 million for the city. They were willing to release that 2 years early, but they wanted, in order to do that, to reduce that capital contribution that they had not, so there was between 4 and 5 or whatever it says now, but to be like 3. And the city approved it. The county commission did not. And so it took another 2 years for the money to be released, which in my opinion was a good thing. We still have that same level that we're looking at. So I don't know that saying Mr. Lupica is the one that created the mess, or his point created the new point created the mess. I don't believe that to be the case at all. I believe, but based upon what they know, their background in it, and their resources that they have to do evaluations, to obtain information, and they are ones that know the hospital business. Could we look for somebody else? I assume we could. But how long is that going to take? You know, and again, I don't want it to sound like we have to do this. We have to rush it because we want to get it, you know, we want to get it done. But it is one company that we're aware of that can do this. We had discussions about, Jamie and I, about who we might be able to look to. And I actually raised the question, is he still around? And she was able to find that he was, and his business still was. I hope that somewhat answered your question.
Okay, so that does answer my part of this question. And I know that I had concerns over the price tag. And I know that we did put in there up to. Do we have a price breakdown? Because there's going to be, how many phases is this?
I will refer to Jamie on that portion.
Okay.
Jamie Michael, County's Health and Human Services Department. The contract will be billed based on hours of work completed, so we can stop services at any point. The first phase is to look at the documents and identify compliance or non-compliance issues. If you all want to stop after that, we can stop after that. If we want to go on and then have them say, okay, here's the issues, and then have them suggest ways of standardized reporting, have them suggest some metrics for evaluating and reviewing those reports. We can continue to draw down hours for those projects. And then if we get to a place where we think parts of the document need to be renegotiated or amended, we can continue to draw down more of their time. So the ultimate cost and how much we expend really depends on how much work we want to solicit from them, and we can stop at any point. We will most likely receive monthly invoices, so you'll have the opportunity every 30 days to say, okay, we're wrapping this up now, or yes, we want to continue.
So with that being said, are you going to be providing monthly updates to the board?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, if that's what is requested, that's what will be provided. I think Mr. Andrews has indicated he's going to be working on that reporting, how he's going to get that reporting of all these different topics to the board, and I think that would be something that could very well be included in there, and I'm not trying to speak for him, but absolutely, sir.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out how we were going to get the update to be able to make a decision of if this is the route we want to go or not. Commissioner Reynolds?
Mr. Chair, I have a question about phases here. You've talked about several things that we could possibly do, and I'd like to understand what our goals are in each one of those phases as well. And like number one, what is required by the contract? Are we compliant? Are we not compliant? What changes we want to make? I think each time we get finished with something like that, I think we should say, the first goal is to actually find out, what's required by the contract. The second one is find out what compliance we have. I think by the time we get to the end of that, I think you should just hold the horses, get a good presentation, understanding of what that is, and then determine what our options are going forward after that. So I don't want to lock us into this, without stopping and reevaluating where we are immediately. Number one, because I don't even know what options we have. Let's say we find out that they haven't met the contract. What options do we have? What Chair has mentioned here about the fact that they're supposed to allocate a certain amount of revenue in order to maintain the facilities, which we know they have not. Okay? What options do we have, and do we know any options right now that we could take? I'd like to understand that.
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I believe the first step is we've got to figure out where we are. And that would be the first step of it. And I think you're correct on it that, and where Ms. Michael is talking about the phases, I think that's where that comes into play. We find out where are we, then that decision is made. Do we go from where we figure out where we are? Is there an issue? Is there not an issue? There's not an issue, well, we can stop. If there is an issue, now let's figure out how do we address the issue of the various issues that are there. I think that's what the phased approach is designed to do.
So what is the first priority?
It's stated in here is to review the lease agreements with MMC and related documents, identification of lease compliance, non-compliance issues.
That's it.
And there is 3 pages of in-depth.
Other ideas, yeah.
Yeah, so if you read the contract, it's in there.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah. So I'd
So
like to
then the
finish
goals
number
are-
one, and
so-
get number one done, and then see where we are there without continuing to do other.
Which is the phased approach that was being mentioned. So yeah, once phase one is done, it needs to be brought to the board officially. Also, we probably need to include our counterparts at the city in some way, shape, or form in this. I understand that this is our portion of figuring this out.
And
but we-
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, don't mean to interrupt, but I've had at least 3 phone calls with the attorneys for the city where we've discussed this. We brought to their attention this is taking place, and we're looking to coordinate, become better coordinated working with them. And also in some of the conversations we've had with the attorneys from LifePoint, so that we're coordinating more with them so that there's more flow exchange of information. But we are, I believe, at this point, the legal departments between the city and the county are having more conversation. And I believe Ms. Michael has been having some conversations, I think, with the county city manager directly.
The city manager and Barbara, the
So there is that getting, she indicates they've all seen the proposal, and I think everybody's, city and county both, the staff at both believe this is a good way to proceed to figure out where are we, to address the questions that have arisen.
Mr. Chair?
Really quick on that as well, and then Commissioner Reynolds, you can go. So I think a large portion that I'm a little confused with is a lot of this information that they're going to be reviewing needs to be coming from MMC directly, correct?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner, that's correct. And so some of that is from the information, I think will be from the information that was requested by the city.
Okay.
And also, there's some other information there indicated that they're able to access through some publicly available sources. Now, LifePoint being a private equity firm, they don't make the same reporting that they do as if they were a publicly traded corporation or nonprofit corporation. But because they are a medical facility and because there are other things that they must report publicly that they're able to have access to, that they know where to access and where to get it.
Okay. And have we had any conversations with MMC about their willingness to go down this path with us? Yes, okay. I don't need any other, that nod works. Okay. Commissioner Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Gooden, is the city hiring a different lawyer in order to do the same thing as we're doing?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, no, this is not an attorney. This individual, he has a law degree, but he's not a practicing attorney. He is a healthcare expert. And so he's not an attorney. The city has their in-house counsel, and they also have an attorney that they have retained for some of these issues that had done the demand letter for certain documentation, certain reporting. But they're not looking to the same, hiring somebody doing the same thing here that we're doing. So there's not going to be that duplication. We've not hired somebody to do the same thing that their outside attorney has done up to this point. So that's why we're having the conversation, so there's not the duplication of efforts between the two entities.
Now, shouldn't they still be working together, though, in order to make sure that we don't duplicate the effort?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, that is the intent. And that's what the conversations that are being had between legal departments and with Ms. Michael and the other staff at the city.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner.
Thank you. So working with an advisor versus a lawyer, they're just going to advise us. And I guess where's that understanding of case law and how it applies to this case? Because I'm assuming there's going to be discussions with that.
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, first thing we need to figure out the facts. You know, any good attorney that's going to analyze your case for you and to make some legal analysis needs to know the facts. And that's what this is doing, is helping us to obtain the facts that we need. And then they do have expertise in, well, they're not practicing attorneys. They understand the healthcare law, and then they can direct us to if we need more experience in healthcare law on some avenues that we may be able to explore for attorneys. I will tell you, I don't know healthcare law, and if I tried to handle that for the county, I would make a big mess for us, and we don't want that. So, but I think this is the first step of that process, determining do we get to the point where we need legal counsel to bring some sort of legal action, or do we get the information, the facts, set that out, and then being able to have the discussion with Memorial Medical Center to see where we proceed from here.
Okay, and I think looking through the different sections here, I think that's where I guess I'm a little concerned about the fact that I think, number one, great, it talks about reviewing the lease agreements, but as you go through, it's already advising us on how we achieve and get to an agreement with MMC. I think, as you said, I think we need to understand the very beginning of, are we even meeting the requirements of the contract? I don't need to know right now, at least in my mind, and maybe this goes to Commissioner Reynolds' point of understanding maybe having checkpoints, because I guess right now I'm not at a point yet from a commission standpoint, if we're going to make decisions, of understanding how we get to a happy medium with Memorial Medical Center. I think the priority right now is to understand, are they meeting the requirements of the lease agreements? Then I think internally, then we need to know what they're violating or not. And then if they are in violation, then sure, I think then we can determine a path forward. I don't know that having a contract that already is saying that we're going to pay them to do this, I have some concerns with anticipating this is already the direction we're going to go. So I guess that's my concern with the contract here, is just understanding, we're signing a contract that's looking several steps ahead, which normally I wouldn't mind, but we don't know what steps we're going to take yet. And this is almost feel like this is assuming this is the direction we're going to go.
Okay, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we've come up with, we've talked about the phased approach. We've come up with a proposal. We've come up with items. One of the things that I will tell you that has frustrated me over the last couple of years with this commission is we bring things to you and you criticize them, but don't give us answers. Don't give us the next step. You tell us this is not what we need. We need more steps. We need more whatever, but you never really come to us with what that is that we need to do, other than the questioning that you give us like this. And so if this is what you want to do, I think then we should sit down with you and go through these different steps and say, where do we want these breakpoints to be? Do we set this contract up so that it is only for phase 1? And then when we finish that phase, we come back. Do we have a phase 2? So that it's very clear, but we go to them and say, okay, all we want you to do right now is do this portion of it, and then we will decide whether we need to go somewhere else. That is a particularly acceptable way to do it. But I think we need that direction, and I think that direction is hard to get as we sit here in a commission meeting when we're making our proposals, and then you're picking apart the proposals that we have and never really give us that next step, never give us that, where do we cut this short? That's what if we are going to change this, which we can absolutely do because you're the ones that approve the contract, but I think we need more of that direction then. And when do we get it? Where do we get it? So that's where I'm at with some of this as well. I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I don't disagree that maybe we need to shorten down what this scope is, and rather than saying we have 4 phases, we say, explain, they can stop at any point we want. But if you want it limited to phase 1 first and then come back and see where we go with the next step, we can absolutely do it that way as well.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Sanchez.
Mr. Gooden?
Yes.
Did we ever have conversation about this before among the 5 of us on this agreement and what we wanted?
Well, we were asked, my understanding is there was a request to figure out what's going on with the hospital. Is there an issue there that we need to deal with? And so we've put this together. So if there's something more that you want, we can have those discussions with an individual commissioner or with, but you know, and that's one of the difficulties when we have a commission that has to have, you know, we have to do a lot of work in open session. So to limit some of these and to bring them, you know, exactly what wording do we want? How do we want to go? And we, you know, this has been out there for some time. The packets get out, and I understand it's not a lot of time, but were there any questions made about that prior to the meeting today, so we would understand a little more where you were coming from and what some of your issues were?
Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Gooden, I guess while I understand your point, unless you're the chairman or vice chairman, you don't see some of these packets until Thursday, Friday, which gives us exactly probably 1 day on Monday to review it and get with you and to be able to make changes. And in which case, it's not going to be reflective on the agenda. So I understand your concern. I'm just bringing up concerns to my fellow commissioners of where, and that's why I'm asking you questions so that I have a better understanding. So while, like I said, I get your frustration, but understand, like you said, the challenge of trying to make sure we're meeting the requirements of the Open Meetings Act. I can't, talk with Commissioner Reynolds, the chairman, or the vice chairman unless we're in an open session. So while your frustration is noted, I'm going to ask questions and just understand. So that way, if we need to make changes, then we'll give you that direction. But I really don't appreciate where the frustration comes from if you haven't reached out to us directly individually and had the discussion, because if I only have a day or two to review it, I'm not going to be able to do a full analysis of it. So that's where I think we're at here, and we're trying to have that conversation. And so if the commission decides they want to go forward with the contract, that's fine. I just want to make sure we have a good, thorough discussion about this before we're doing it. And we shouldn't be castigated because we're trying to do that.
But Mr. Commissioner, you do that to the people that presented. They feel that you castigate them with some of the questions and the methodology that you use.
We're going to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and have, yes, we are, and we're going to have continued conversations on this. We will be back at 1:10. Okay?